afternoon, and welcome to another episode of A Contagious Smile, where every smile tells a story. I'm so excited. We have Whitney with us. I have to tell you, before we even get started, and I hope I don't embarrass her, I have had the privilege of knowing this amazing, beautiful woman for a few months now.
Yeah.
And she is just a light. She's a light of information. She is a light of resources. And I just want to dive right into it. And I'm so excited because I'm going to give a little teaser that her podcast is getting released in the next couple of weeks. And I've been hanging by a thread, waiting and waiting and waiting on it to be released. And now it's here.
It is. Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Yeah, Impostrix podcast is the name of the podcast, and it's coming. It is coming. So folks, please, we already do have a trailer on, so people can subscribe already and listen to the trailer, and can also follow me on Impostrix podcast on, what is it, Instagram. Yeah, but yeah, so my name is Whitney.
Tell me what
Yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah,
So
I know.
my name is Whitney Lee, and the podcast is called Impostrix Podcast, and it is a podcast that affirms the experiences of professionals of color who navigate imposter syndrome and racial toxicity within their careers. And I am someone, I am a woman, I'm a Black woman, I'm in the legal profession, I'm a civil rights attorney. I'm also an equity and inclusion consultant to law firms throughout the US. And now I'm a podcast host. And I really, delight in these kinds of conversations that I have with Victoria and others about the power of women. And that's really what we were talking about pre-recording, is just how amazing we are, regardless of our race, regardless of our backgrounds. The fact of the matter is that a lot of us are in situations in our life where we are controlling things, we are making things happen, whether that's in our household, whether that's at work, whether that's within our friend groups. In my household, I'm responsible for making sure all the appointments get made, the kids get to their school and activities and all of that. And I work full time, and it's a lot. And so many of us think that we are worthless, or think that we, are second class. And we're not. We're the best.
Yeah.
Women are the best. We give life. Are you serious? We are the best.
You know what? They need to be validated. I love to be validated. I love it. That is her phrase. That is her tagline. And what is the be validated stand for? What's the acronym stand for?
Yes. So be validated is what I want folks to walk away when they listen to a conversation that I'm in. I want them to walk away feeling as though they are validated. And so be validated. We have words for each of those, meanings for each of those. The first is believe. So believe in yourself, and then engage. Engage with us, engage with each other. The spaces that I want to be in are spaces that are communal learning and support spaces. They're not teaching where I'm some expert somewhere and telling you to do these things. No, I want to learn from you because you have power and you have something to give, just as I have something to give. And when we talk about validated, we're valued, we're affirmed, we are limitless. We can do whatever we want, y'all. We can literally do whatever we want to do. We may have to be strategic around it. We may have to take on some additional jobs, maybe for the money or skills in order to be in the position that we need to be in. But we can do whatever we want to do. I is for intuitive, because I really want to encourage people to listen to their intuition. We have so much information coming at us all the time. And a lot of this, particularly for folks of color, for folks living with disabilities, for survivors of crime and of domestic abuse and violence, we are gaslit. We're gaslit. So this idea that what I'm experiencing, I'm not actually experiencing it, or that I'm being unreasonable because I'm hurt by something that you said, or because I want to go spend time with my friends. That's an unreasonable thing for me to want to do. So I want us to listen to our intuition and like sort out for ourselves what is right and what is wrong for us, for our individual bodies. We are deserving. That's what D stands for, is deserving. We are deserving of all of the goodness in this world. And we have worth.
Yeah.
We have worth. A is for activated. When we have these conversations, I want folks to leave feeling like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna go do something. I'm gonna go do something today, or I'm gonna do something this week. I'm gonna have a plan for whatever goal that I have. We are treasured. I treasure you. I treasure my conversations with Victoria, y'all, because I take so much from them. And like it's a sisterhood. It really
Yes.
is.
Yes.
So we are treasured. E is emboldened, and D is divine.
Okay.
We are
Oh, I
divine.
love that whole message. The whole message is like amazing. It's so
Yeah.
inspirational. It really is. Now, for people who might not know, what is imposter syndrome? Can you explain it so that people can understand?
I can. Imposter syndrome is this idea. It was coined by two psychologists in the late 1970s who were studying their clients who were primarily white middle class women. And they found that these women, they were high achieving women. So they were women in professional careers, or they were PhDs, or they were seeking advanced educational skills in colleges and universities. But they always felt as though they were intellectually fake. That, like, even though they had all of these accomplishments behind them, even though they had their PhDs, for example, they felt as though what they were actually giving like was somehow fake, or that they weren't as smart as other people thought they were. And then one of the key kind of components of imposter syndrome is the fear that somebody's going to find out about your fakeness. So it's, in short, this idea that I'm an intellectual fraud and that somebody's going to find out. And people who experience imposter syndrome can experience this in just one area of their life, like in the workplace, or they can experience it in various areas of their lives. And one place that I've experienced it is actually in motherhood. And I don't know if you can relate, Victoria, or not, but I'm somebody that dealt with postpartum depression, and I have a history of depression. And so as I was getting ready to have my first child, I started going to therapy because I just figured I was going to be one of the ones that had the postpartum depression. And I did actually have it, but when I had it, it looked much different than how depression had looked for me in the past. It felt more of like this overwhelm, and in hindsight, this imposter syndrome of like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't know how to be a mother. And I was sad because I didn't know how to be a mother. And like, not happy. Like, why am I not happy that I have this beautiful baby? A baby that I wanted, a very planned child.
Oh, sorry. He's so cute. That little face.
Yes, my son Everett just made his way in, and Victoria had a chance to meet him.
I told her, I
Yeah,
was like, he could be in trouble, and I would just look at him and be like, "What? What'd you do?" Oh,
yeah. So yeah, I experienced this kind of like, I'm not a real mom because I don't feel like I felt real moms should feel. Like, I'm not somebody that wants to be with my child every second of the day. I was ready to send my kids to daycare after maternity leave. And the constant comparison between myself and how other people parent is something that's made me feel kind of impostery. And so that's just one example, but like I said, we can experience it in many areas of our lives. Um, and we can experience it even though in other areas of our lives, we are 100% confident and competent. Um, so it's a tricky thing, and we can utilize lots of different coping mechanisms in order to kind of live with imposter syndrome. And sometimes that might look like not showing up authentically because we are afraid that if we show up authentically, then people will figure out that we are frauds. they'll figure out what our true capability is and they won't like it. And so people with imposter syndrome may do a lot of people pleasing in order to kind of get that individual person's buy-in or that organization's buy-in before they kind of show up as them actual selves. Because then if they do disappoint somebody, so like if I disappoint you, Victoria, with who I actually am, you're already invested in me as a person. And so maybe you'll accept me and all of my flaws. So that's one thing. But also we have this fear of rejection. And so we bend and shape ourselves in ways to make sure that other people are happy with what we're doing so that we are not rejected. So it's very complex. And some of these things that I'm describing are things that I've experienced in other areas of my life that's not attached to imposter syndrome. And so I wonder about like codependency. For me, I'm reminding myself of codependency. And when I've been in abusive relationships, like how that's felt and me really wanting to mold myself to just be the person that's not going to make you mad, you know? Um, so yeah, I mean, that's a very long explanation
Like,
and some examples.
yeah, it's a great explanation. But in today's society, Whitney, it feels like we as women do everything we can for everybody else, and we put ourselves like on the very back burner. We don't take care. There's no self care on ourselves. And then, for instance, like a lot of my friends will have me go with them and negotiate anything, because that's my wheelhouse is negotiation. So, like for instance, I just got new air conditioning, and immediately the guys go straight to the mint. The salesman or whatever, go straight to the mint, and I'm like, no, sweet, you're dealing with me, and it's immediately like, what? You go and buy a car, and they go, oh, we got a woman coming. Watch this. I'm gonna add this snake oil and this and this and this. I'm gonna add this and this, and then they think it's okay, but it's not. And then the women confront them with almost like this internal kind of introvert way where they're like, okay, oh, you need a bumper to bumper warranty on a brand new 1 mile car. It's another 7,000. Okay. And then, oh, you need if you sneeze in your car charge. Okay. And it's like we conform because we have such reservation of how people think of us that we don't care about how we see each other, how we
Mm-hmm.
see ourselves. It's okay, we're such people pleasers as women, wives, husbands, partners, to whomever you're with, that we just lose our true inner self.
Yes. And this has happened to me, what you're describing about when you went through this thing with the air conditioner. Matter of fact, I also had a situation with an air conditioner repairman who came in asking for my husband. Like came to the house, I opened the door and he asked for my husband. And I said, my husband's not available, but I am. Like, we can talk.
Did you get that? We'll come
I
back later.
What was that?
Did you get that? We'll come back later when we can talk to
We
him.
did no, nah, he wouldn't. I did not, but it was like, I'm capable of having this conversation with you. I understand, the words, and if I don't, then I'll ask you the questions. Like, and for me, this really has to do with like standing in our power, um, and acknowledging that we have power. We have the right to ask questions. So if somebody is trying to sell us something that we just don't need or that doesn't sound quite right to us or that we don't understand, we don't have to nod along and like agree just because there's somebody that says that they know. Like we can, with car sales, we can go home, research, and come back tomorrow.
Yes.
That's totally okay.
Right.
And for us to be sometimes pressured into these type of decisions because it's usually men who are like talking over us, making us feel small. And then when we have a question to ask, make us feel stupid. Like that's gaslighting.
Yes.
That's a great example of like what that can look like when it's not such a personal, hot topic issue. Is just this feeling of like, no, you have a right to have questions. You have a right to ask those questions. You have a right to be respected in every space that you walk in, simply because you're a person, like you're human, just like they are.
We had a few different people from companies come over and give us an estimate and see. And one of them was like, oh, I can't remember what the code was that I give. Hold on, I gotta go back and look. And I recited it just instantly. I was like, da, 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 da. And he looks over at my husband. He goes, oh, I guess the woman days of being barefoot in the kitchen are over. And he goes, oh, ooh, no, no, no,
It's
no.
like your husband knows, like, woo, he said the wrong thing in front
Like,
of the wrong
no.
one.
And he said, she may walk up and say, hey, this is who I am or whatever. And my husband's like, she's too doctorate. She don't mention any of that. She's just, to me, you put on your pants the same way I do. He puts on his pants the same way I do. I'm not a big about titles. When I was in the corporate world, I treated my CEO like I treated my receptionist. I treated my executive assistant. I treated everybody the same. We are people. I don't see any of that garbage. I treat you with respect, then I get respect back. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's how it's supposed to be. But when these guys are like, oh, I guess you're not pregnant in the kitchen anymore. And I'm like, you do know that it was one of me who carried you, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
you can't carry a child because you get a toothache and you're bedridden for a week where we're in labor and we're dealing with your man cold and we're cleaning up our broken water and preparing dinner in a casserole somewhere before we drive to the hospital, give birth, come home, nurse, work from home, and do everything else while you sit your lazy butt on the couch with your popcorn or chips, and you're like, babe, can you have me a brew? Can you have me a beer? It's like, I'm nursing your offspring. Can you,
Yeah.
whatever it is? And we do so much. And I love my husband. He's my soulmate. There's not a question in the world that ever has doubted that he is the one. But when I say something to him, I'm like, oh my gosh, look, like when I got my doctorate, he was like, I don't expect any less from you. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
what? How about I? He's like, this is who you are. And I'm like, but I would have loved it. I'm so proud of the accomplishment. And it was just like, it's what I came to expect.
Mm-hmm.
We need to validate ourselves as women and help each other because we're our worst critics. We are our worst critics. We care so much about making everything else great for everybody else that we forget about ourselves and self-care. And it's not okay, And then if something happens, then it puts us even further back where we need to be. And that's why we all need to come together and pull each other off of the couch and say, we got you. We're going to be there for you. You're not doing this alone.
Yeah, that's right. And that reminds me of this another component of imposter syndrome, which is that thought that when something good happens or when we've achieved something, it's because of luck. And when we fail at something, or maybe it doesn't go how we anticipated, or there's some kind of adverse outcome, that is a showing of our true capability.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like we can never give ourselves the props that we're due. And then when bad things happen, it's our fault. And that's because we suck. That's the internal belief. And you're right. Like we can't succumb to that because it starts like the believing in ourselves needs to happen within. I have a close group of friends who I call my sister circle. I rely on them for affirmation in times where I am struggling to affirm myself because that happens. That absolutely happens.
Yep.
And they serve this role of like helping me remember that I am amazing. But like I also have to do that work myself too. And so this is the reminder to everybody out there that like we got this. Like we got this. And when the times come where we feel as though we don't got this, then have somebody in your life who can support you and who can remind you of all of the greatness that you are, who can remind you of all of your accomplishments or of what you've overcome or of boundaries that you set. Like that's another big one for women is like not we feel as though we're not entitled to have boundaries. And sometimes it's because when we have boundaries, other people make us feel badly about them or we feel badly about them. So like going back to motherhood, just as a mom, one of the boundaries that I have to have is that my children don't get access to me every second of the day. Like right now, my mother-in-law is watching my child. And I have to be able to take a step back from my children so that I can do the things that my goals as just a single individual, independent woman. Like my identity is not 100% your mother, child, And then I have to actually like keep those boundaries, which is difficult, just very difficult. Um, but we can feel so guilty. And even my children, they're children, so they expect their mom all the time. But Victoria heard my son Everett talking about like, well, but mommy, when are you gonna like basically when do I have access to you again? Because I'm expecting to have access to you at all times. And he has a right to feel that. Like, let me know. I'm not talking mess about my child. He has a right to feel that because he is a child and I am his mother. And I have to protect my energy and my space so that I can do whatever the goals are that I have in my life and so that I can do self care. And I don't have to feel bad about that. I don't have to feel guilty about it.
Tell you because nobody like got to see this, but when you were talking to him, your eyes changed so much. And I was looking at your eyes, and your eyes were so full of love and glisten when you looked at him. And you were like, I know, and I'll be in there like an hour and a half. And you were trying to be like, I got you, it's fine. But your eyes were like, I love this kid. Like he's
Mm-hmm.
just and this is my boy, this is my baby. But I need to let you know that you need to have a little independence too. And that's so important for them. They
Mm-hmm.
need to have independence, but your eyes were all like, "This is my heart. This is my baby." It
Mm-hmm.
was so sweet. It was so cute.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the thing, and it's also, going back to what you said, like being that I know firsthand when I went through the domestic violence, I never thought I'd be that woman. I never thought I'd be that
Mm-hmm.
bad ever. And people actually would say to me, "What did you do to make him mad? Why didn't you just do what he wanted? Why?" And then I got to that point. Like you hear it every day, you begin to believe it. Like when
That's right.
someone says you're ugly, you're fat, you're never going to be worth anything, people feel sorry for me for being with you. You begin to think this is my standard. This is where I belong. I'm never going to get better than this. And that's where I was. I got to the point I jumped when I heard a sound. And
Mm-hmm.
it was horrible. Like it feels like the best explanation I can give is being an asthmatic trapped in a room of smokers and no window or door. I mean, because you
Mm-hmm.
can't breathe in
Mm-hmm.
so many ways. And now, you hear that, why did you make him mad? You should do what he wants. And even people were like, well, he's the man. He's the man. He's a freaking coward. He is a coward. If you're going to
Mm-hmm.
hit a woman, even if you're a woman and you hit a man, you're still a coward.
Mm-hmm.
Walk away. Turn around and be that bigger person.
Mm-hmm.
Walk away. If you're going to, like my abuser did, he shot and killed my puppy to prove a point of what he would do to me if I tried to leave. That doesn't make you a man. What person on this planet says, "What did you do to make him mad?" That's not a man. That is not a man. That is not a man to me is my grandfather. A man to me was someone who worshipped and adored his family, lived for his wife. Everything was look at my beautiful bride, pulled the chair out, ordered for her. I mean, was there when she was healthy, was there when she was sick, and never, ever complained. I never saw them fight. If they had a disagreement, it was behind closed doors. I wanted that relationship. I emulated everything about them and who I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to be as a woman, a mother, a partner, a friend. And that is a man. But for someone to hit somebody, male or female, in front of their partner, whatever the sexes is in the
Mm-hmm.
relationship, you're showing your kids that that's okay behavior to not only emulate, but to accept.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't understand how people think that that is okay. And I talked to so many beautiful people who I hate how I've met them because they've been abused. And they're like, I'm not worth it. This is all I'm ever going to get. So I might as well stay. Do you love your kids? Do you? Because it's going to happen. If it hasn't happened yet, that individual is going to be your children. It's going to happen
Mm-hmm.
in a matter of time. And you might not think you're worth it. Your children are. And that doesn't need to be the life they come up in. And then they feel no security. Home is supposed to be a place of security. They're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to know that when they walk in that door, they're unconditionally loved, they're unconditionally accepted, and they are home. That is a place where they know that they are safe. Now you go to school and they're not safe there either, whether they're being bullied or they are becoming a bully. It's because they
Mm-hmm.
want attention.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, immediately, we go and look at it the whole wrong way. And everybody turns around and says, "Oh, I'm more worried about the judgment from the other parents and staff of the school than the decisions that I make with my child." I promise you, in 5 years, or not even 5 years, you're not going to know these people anymore. And you know what? To me, I don't care. When Faith was in public school before I homeschooled her, they knew I was the room mother. I was the grade chair. I did everything for them. They also knew if you endangered my child in any way because she had a parapro, you had to be
Mm-hmm.
trained to be with her. I trained them myself. If you did anything, the wrath is coming, and they knew it because that's my child.
Yeah.
You know, you want to say now that there's schools that believe now it's okay to paddle kids, but if you or I paddled our kid, they're going to call CPS on us. But a
Mm,
person who is not related is allowed to paddle. Are you crazy? I
mm,
told them one day, I said, be done. Be done. Pick up
mm-hmm.
a paddle. Just,
Mm-hmm.
just do it and watch what's going to come because you are not touching my child.
Mm.
You know, and what would you do if you found out the teacher hit one of your kids?
It'd be over. There wouldn't be like talk about a lawsuit. I mean, my husband, when Everett, my youngest, was, I don't know, probably 2 years old. Evidently, my husband walked in on the daycare teacher threatening another child with a belt, and my
No,
Everett never went back. Like my husband, we had stuff there, like Everett's property, bottles and stuff were still there. Like we never even
placeable.
went back.
Yeah, placeable.
Yeah, like never went back. My husband called me and was like, "Well, today was Everett's last day at that school."
That's
I'm like, "Yes, absolutely,
yes,
absolutely."
because we are their voices. They can't
Hmm.
speak. You know, you can't do that. Like I helped out in the special needs classroom, and they had every grade in there, and I worked with the grade above my daughter, and we were doing fractions, and I used the chalkboards. Now you have a wipe on, wipe off boards,
Yeah,
and I always bring in like treats and surprises, but you don't know anymore if they're allergic or whatever. And
yeah.
so I bring in stickers and cute giveaways and colors and coloring books and little prizes, none of which are food. And I go in there and I'm like, okay, what's everybody's favorite thing? These third graders said pizza. And I'm like, okay, so I drew a pizza on the wipe off board.
Mm.
And the teacher comes up, and there's three of the kids and myself, so I kind of did four. And I was like, oh, okay, so here's our pizza. And I was like, who wants what on it? And everybody was like, pepperoni. So I just threw a little. And the teacher comes up and goes, you are wasting your time because they're never going to announce anything. And I was like, can I speak to you in the hall for a moment, please? Because I said, they
Oh
heard
my
you.
God, that
You know
I,
they heard you, right? And I'm like, that's not okay. And you know what? You're not working with them. I am. So I go back over and say to them, okay, here's 1/4 or one slice, and you start working with them, and they get it. Everybody learns different. I don't care who you are. Everybody is going to learn differently. And so we went about it a different way and had the journey of a different way, and then they got it. And so, you know what? I give them choices in the pencils. And okay, here's some pencils, here's some cool erasers, here's a cool notebook, here's some cool stickers. I got to learn what they like, and I would bring this stuff to them. And then I let them have like the ticket thing where I would say, okay, you get a ticket, and if you get 5 tickets, you get to go into the big box and bonus. And then they were so excited because they want that positive recognition. And that is so critically important because they're still a person. They're still an individual. And that's what the problem is that so many people today don't even look at it. And they are the happiest people on this planet. They don't care about the little things. They don't let the little things become drama issues. They value every single second of life. And
right.
we need to learn from them because they are the ones showing the way. These things that, everybody else that bother them doesn't phase them at
Mm-mm.
all. And that's so wrong. Like my daughter got bullied. Well, there's a zero bullying tolerance. So I go to the principal and they're like, you have to make an appointment. I walked right past into the office and I'm like, I'm not making an appointment. And I said, where is it? Here it says here, there's a zero tolerance. Well, your daughter is in special needs, so it doesn't say that. I was like, well, I'm sorry, I don't have my glasses with me, but where does it say that in the handbook? It doesn't have an exclusion. It doesn't have anything down here because she's in the special needs. She is exempt from bullying. Like bullying doesn't matter to her. It's allowed to happen. And they're like, well, we're not going to do anything about it. Oh, yes, you are, because it's not going to happen, and she will never be somebody's, little body punching bag. It's not going to happen.
Well, and I think like this really, when you said this thing about the teacher who said, you know, you're wasting your time because they're never going to amount to anything. Like that's that's the underlying message that we have about people with disabilities and students with disabilities in this society. And you know, I'm somebody. I also my son is autistic, but I've also done a lot of work professionally with people who live with disabilities, and it's such a pervasive message to the point of when Faith is bullied, they don't treat the bullier the same way that they would treat everybody else because Faith is a person with special needs. Like, what?
Right.
How does that make sense? So, because Faith is a person with special needs, and that means evidently to you that she matters less, then we are not going to hold these other students to the same standard as we would if they were bullying somebody else because what they I don't know, like what? Because they also don't believe that they, you know, like it's just it's so I think it's so important for us as adults, whether or not we are parents, adults that have children in our lives, like we need to have these conversations with our kids that it's okay to see differences. Like see differences. Like acknowledge me for everything that I am. Acknowledge that, you know, my son might behave a little bit differently than you expect and ask me questions about that and like learn about it and get to know more about it, but don't disrespect him.
Right.
And I, you know, had to have a conversation with with Everett, the cute one that you just saw, because we went through a drive-through, and the woman who was speaking to us over the intercom had an accent, a Southern accent. We're in the South, so I don't know why to him it sounded quote unquote weird, but he felt like this woman sounded weird. And I had to, when we went through the drive-through, turn around and look him in the eye to say, we don't talk about that other people speak weird because what you're comparing him to or that person to is how you speak. And nobody said anything about how you speak being the right way to speak. Like, that's just how you speak. And that's just how this other woman speaks. Like, there's no better or worse, there's no right or wrong. It's just speech. It's how we communicate, and we get to communicate however we want. And I think like it's really important for us to have these conversations. And I told him like I don't want to hear you talking about like how somebody speaks in a way that's derogatory. I mean, I didn't use that word because he's 5, but you know, like it's okay. It's okay to say, oh, I noticed that that person has an accent, or it seems like that person is speaking a different language. Like, yeah, let's talk about that. But if you're trying to like say it in a way, and for him it was his tone, the tone, like, why does she speak so weird? You know, like, no, no, son, no. Because
Educational moment.
right, it's an educational moment because also they're kids. And so kids don't come out of the womb knowing everything, you know, and so you know, it's on us to teach.
Absolutely. Why
Yeah.
do you think that there's so much violence in schools now?
Mm.
Why do you think that we have so much violence in schools?
So I don't know. I truly I do not know because and this is something that is starting to become more personal to me, of course, because my children are entering school this year. So the oldest will be in kindergarten. And of course, I have concerns about their safety.
Yes.
And as I'm going on these tours to these various schools, they all have various security measures, including, you know, locking doors and kind of buzzers and alarms and security officers. And you know, I know in some of the high schools and middle schools, they have metal detectors for guns and knives and weapons and all of these things. Um, and I don't know what's going on. All I know is that we've got some maladapted people, like some people who are just struggling with a variety of issues and they're taking it out on our children or they're taking it out, you know, in mass shootings in grocery stores. Um,
What about the
and
kindergartner who shot his teacher?
I mean, it's crazy. Um, it's and it's not okay. I don't think, obviously, I hope nobody thinks that kindergartners should have access to guns, but maybe somebody, I guess somebody does, or somebody wasn't paying attention to their child. I don't know. But I do think that we need to have these conversations again, um, with our loved ones and with our children about what it means to care for each other, what it means to protect each other. If we are people who want to have guns or who feel a need to have guns in our homes, like what are the things that we need to do to ensure that those guns are being safely stored, to make sure that we know how to use these guns. And I am guilty of this myself because we have guns in my household that are locked up, but I don't really know how to use them. Like I don't,
Here,
I need to go.
I'll teach you. I am. I
I need,
used to shoot like. Trust me. We have so many guns here and knives and all sorts of. I adamantly love shooting. I love to shoot.
yeah, no, I like it. I mean, for me, it's good stress relief, and it's crazy because being from Seattle, like I used to be very anti-gun, and I can't say that I'm anti-gun now. Like, yeah, politically, yes, I think that we need to have more strict gun laws and stuff like that. But anyways, we have guns, and I go to the shooting range probably like once a year. So like I can figure it out, but I'm somebody, I will call myself out. If I have a gun, I need to be shooting it more than once a year.
I
Like
agree.
I need to be very familiar with it.
Right.
Because like for me, the purpose of having it in my household, my husband's a southerner, so the purpose of us having it is for protection. And if I can't use it, then it's not protection. It's just a very dangerous weapon to have in the
Yes.
home.
It is.
And so I think that there are various things that we can be doing to ensure that um, we are, creating communities of safety. Um, and I also wonder about conflict, about this thing, conflict, because conflict doesn't always have to be bad.
It's true.
Conflict can hurt, and conflict can be harmful. But I think conflict is like valid and necessary and okay. And so I'm just wondering, like, what's happening that we are in situations where we've been so hurt or so triggered by whatever is going on in our lives that we're now needing to go hurt other people.
Right.
I think, there's societal things. I think there's mental health things. I think we could talk a lot about services that are available or not available for communities that are living with mental health or substance abuse.
Yeah.
And I think all of those play a factor into like why our schools are experiencing such, alarming rates of violence.
Then they have one counselor for like 300 kids.
Right.
That's not enough either. I've had people reach out, and I want to see your thoughts on this. If you follow this, this story literally just ate at me. A guy, I'm not sure where he was. Did you hear about this? He executed his three boys. They were the cutest little boys. He started fighting with the wife, shot the wife in the hand. My understanding is that she tried to take the gun away. And then he took the boys outside. They were the cutest little ones. And then executed two. One ran off. He grabbed one. He went chasing after him, brought him back, and executed him. And then when the police arrived, he's sitting on the stoop of his porch with his rifle right beside him. And he's like, "Hey, I'm no threat to you. I'm not nothing. Don't worry, I'm good." And they take him, and you can see on the body cam. I've watched the body cam footage that they have this black box over their bodies, and there you can tell there's the hands. And they get him down on the ground, and he's like, "I'm not comfortable. This kind of hurts. Can you pick me up and not put me?" You know, most of these officers, I'm sure, are parents. They have young kids or kids themselves, and he's as calm as can be, and he's just like, "I'm not a threat to you. I wouldn't open the door because my dog doesn't know you, and I wouldn't try to come in. If you leave him alone, he won't hurt you." And he's saying this just like I'm saying it to you. And he's like, "I'm not a threat. I'm not going to do anything. I don't have anything in my pockets." And then they find out that he has been planning this for months and months. This was planned. And you look at something like that and you wonder,
Wow.
how do you look at that child every single day and know that I can't wrap my head around it. Like I
Mhm.
can't. And then you're expected, like when he went to court, the judge was like, "I've never seen anything this gruesome. This is just unbelievable." And he's like, "I don't want to die." And you're like, "You killed your three," and I can't understand the mindset of where he had to have been because it wasn't like a spot action thing, and that's not okay either. But this was like meticulously planned, detail
Mhm.
by detail by detail, in notebooks. How does this even resonate with anyone? And like, as even though you're a lawyer, what are your thoughts on this? I have so many people who've asked me about this specific case and my feelings about it. I would love your point of view on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's incredibly tragic.
Yeah,
How do I answer this? I mean, I guess I don't believe that someone can do that without something going on mentally for them. Like, I don't, I don't think that we're capable of that. And I'm somebody that, in general, I believe that we're good people that make bad decisions. Now, obviously, this is a premeditated decision, is what it sounds like. And I don't know enough about what happened um, to comment on like what could have been going through his head. But it is sad. That's awful. That's absolutely awful. And I wonder, like, what happened in his life to get him there, to
right.
get him to where he needs to harm his family and people like these are his family members, but these are also people, you know um this way. And the fact of the matter is, like, I'm somebody in my profession, so I do civil rights work, as I said, and I work in jails and prisons representing people who have been convicted of these types of crimes, people who have been convicted of murder, people who have been convicted of manslaughter or voluntary manslaughter. At the same time, my husband is a prosecutor who prosecutes only homicides. So he's prosecuting only people who have been accused of these crimes.
Conversation.
Right. Yeah. No, it's interesting. And we have very different philosophies. And my perspective is that I think that our society has a long way to go to be able to support people to in a way that doesn't leave them with this being their only option. Because I guess this person felt like this was their only option. And I don't know if that's because of a mental illness, or I don't know if that's because of a circumstantial thing. Um, I'm making things up right now, but like, I've heard of situations where the social and economic outlook on a family's like life is so dire, maybe because they're in so much debt, that they do these murder suicides usually. And so maybe that was something that was going on. Maybe he thought that maybe he was overly like a religious fanatic who felt as though these people needed to be saved and this was how to save them. Like, I don't know, but it's awful to hear about. Um, certainly people who take other people's lives, like there's something going on. In my line of work, what I spend the most time doing is making sure that regardless of what you've done or been accused of doing, that you're still treated like a human, and that you still have access to medical care, access to like food, access to clean water, access to clean living conditions, or even decent living conditions. We do a lot of work around suing jails and prisons because they're treating people inhumanely and
Not even enough beds,
unconstitutionally.
right? There's not enough
What was
beds.
that?
There's not even enough beds.
There's not enough beds. In one of the local jails here in Atlanta, it's a two-person cell that they have, but they sleep three people to those cells. So there will be one person on top bunk, one person on bottom bunk, and one person on the floor. And these cells are, probably smaller than most people's closets. And
Yeah.
so the floor spot is right next to the toilet. And the toilet, it's not like a toilet at home where like there's a top on the toilet. There's no lid on the toilet. It's just an open like metal toilet.
Yeah.
And oftentimes these toilets don't work. So there's standing feces in these toilets, and bugs and gnats and like all sorts of things. And I'm not, my own personal opinion is that human beings, don't deserve to live this way. Like, we just have basic human rights for me, and if we are going to be in the custody, so if we're in the care of the state or a government, then that state or government needs to ensure that people are living like humans and not like dogs or worse. I mean, with y'all treat your puppies and your dogs way better than people who
I
are in
bet. Yeah.
right than people who are in jails and prisons. Um, so I think it's a multifaceted issue, like our criminal legal system and what drives people with this criminality. Uh, and certainly, I believe in accountability. I don't want anybody listening to me to say, "Oh, well, Whitney just wants everybody to, I don't know, be living it up in their cells with TVs and refrigerators like Martha Stewart." No, that's not. I do believe in accountability, but I also believe that how our country does accountability is deeply flawed, and it's flawed against people of color, it's flawed against people with mental illnesses, and it's flawed against people with disabilities. Because all of these people have varying, things going on that affect how we can show up in society, but also affect our access to things like services. It affects our access to things like attorneys or culturally competent attorneys. So, like, talking about disabilities and access to all of the information that we need when we're dealing with the criminal legal system, we don't always make sure that people with disabilities actually have the access to understand what's going on. Whether that's somebody that's deaf or hard of hearing, not being able to get information communicated to them, because the only way we know how to communicate information is orally through sound, or whether that's somebody who's blind and not being able to have other supports in place to allow those people to communicate. Um, our criminal legal system is a capitalist system that preys on people. So our governments make money when people are incarcerated. And so it begs the question of what is the incentive to decarcerate? Like, what is the incentive to actually make sure that if a cell can only hold two people, that it's only holding two people? When in fact, if a cell has three people, what kind of what does that mean for the government? Is more money coming in, or is the government getting free labor off of these people, these bodies? Because the fact of the matter is, people who have a detail, so that means who have a job
Right.
in jails and prisons, aren't getting paid.
I like
If they're getting
right.
right, if they're getting paid, they're getting paid pennies, dimes to the hour to be outside
It's 100-degree
um
heat.
in 100-degree heat, like mowing the lawn. It's considered a reward. It's a coveted position to have a detail when it's slave labor. And this is labor that our governments would have to pay people for if not for the prison industrial complex and the prison kind of work system. And so, we have people in our jail and prison facilities who are making license plates. We have people who are scanning the traffic cameras to see when somebody has run a red light and recording that information. We have people who are making clothing, who are doing woodwork stuff, who are doing welding, who are cleaning. All of these industries operate within the prison industrial complex. And again, when we have people who are doing these things for no money, that's saving the government money. So it's a very it's very complex. And I know, like, I am a victim or a survivor of crime. So I'm, not coming at this perspective as being somebody that, like, hasn't experienced anything and just wants to love everybody. That's not how I arrive at this position. It's just that I know that I've made some bad decisions. I've made some mistakes that could easily have landed me in jails or prisons. Um, and I just think that you had kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier in the way that you talk about, like, bullying and children who are bullied or who are becoming bullies. And that's that our identities as people don't fit this dichotomy that we feel like it fits. Like, it's not good or bad. It's
Right.
not right or wrong. Like, we can be right and wrong. We can do great things and do bad things. And so even like when I'm thinking about people who have victimized me and who have served time in prison, like, I still have compassion for them because I know that we're human. Like, this is a part of the human condition, is right and wrong. and victim and survivor. Because a lot, these people who are victimizing us are victims themselves, are survivors themselves of whatever the abuse is. And so it's very complicated. It's not black and white. It's all of the things. And I think that we as individuals have a right to feel all of the ways about it, even when those ways conflict. Even
Yes.
if I want somebody to be punished, I can still feel like, but I don't want them to have to sleep next to a toilet bowl that has feces in it.
Let me ask you, why do you think so many people who do get out end up wanting to go back in because they say that they don't feel they can live in society, that they only can live in an incarcerated state? But
Yeah,
why do you think that is?
because it's hard. Like life on the outside is hard. Now life on the inside is hard as well. But particularly when you've become what we call institutionalized. So if you're somebody that's been in jail and prison for a long time, or maybe you're somebody that's grown up like in the foster care system, and then you went from school, maybe you got in a food fight. I talked the other day about um, children and the school to prison pipeline. That essentially, if you get in trouble at school and you do something that can be classified as a crime, then your action can be reported to the criminal courts. And by reporting it to the criminal courts, you could have a charge. You could wind up in juvie. So bullying is an example, as kind of
Unless you're in special needs, and it doesn't matter.
right. As I don't know, complicated as this is, because of course nobody wants their children to be bullied. The fact of the matter is, if somebody is considered a bully and then punished for it, that could have a range of consequences. Everything from just getting suspended or kicked out of the school to like maybe that bully actually did assault somebody. And so now the school has decided to refer that case to the criminal courts. And so now that child bully has criminal charges pending for assault. And then they're convicted. And what happens is they go to juvenile detention. And then once you're in juvenile detention, you have like, I don't know the exact percentage, but you have a higher likelihood of, having additional involvement with the criminal legal system if you've been in juvenile detention. And so I can understand why people, I mean, not in the situation of Faith. Like I don't think we should treat bullies differently depending on who they bully.
Right.
But I can just understand why the zero tolerance and then actually acting on a zero tolerance bully policy can be a bit more complicated because it can have consequences for down the line. And we're still talking about children here. So I think like in these types of scenarios with bullying, I think the solution should be like intervention and prevention and less punishment. Because punishment, and particularly if you're black or brown, you just have a higher likelihood of being referred for crimes for crimes. So you asked like, why do I think some people want to go back or feel like they can do better in an institutional environment? And I think it's because our society can do so much to break somebody down to where they can't live freely. And I think we experience that not only in the criminal and prison and jail environment, but also when we're talking about domestic violence and survivors of domestic violence who feel like it's kind of like, oh, well, if it's so bad, why don't you just leave? Well, that's a prison in and of itself.
Yes.
And that provides security. Sometimes it provides like actual money. Like you can't have a job because of whatever reason. And so you need to rely on that abuser for their money. And sometimes like that means food or a place to live. And I think those are all things that apply also in the criminal legal system and in jails and institutions, is that when you're in these jails and institutions, supposedly you're being fed. You should be having a place to sleep. And some people, if they weren't there, they'd be homeless.
What is the juvenile jails like? I know a lot of on our team talk, a lot of the kids have been like, what is juvenile like? What is juvenile like? Is it they have the same number of inmates in each cell like they do for the adults?
So there's different laws that pertain to what juvenile detention needs to look like, and they vary from state to state. And I can't, so I can't really give a general answer other than that. For the most part, states say they purport to make it so that these facilities are like educational facilities, like they're still supposed to be school, so that these students can learn, but they are jail facilities, and so they're out of their own volition. They are still following a very set routine and structure. Um, they probably have like class requirements and programming requirements. So not only like education in the traditional sense, but also like social social classes and programming around like, I don't know, how to deal with stress, how to deal with anger management classes, that type of thing. Um, People can be in juvenile detention for a year or more. And if you're in some states, it varies. Some states it's 16. I believe 16 and under is called a juvenile, but if you're 17 and up, you're in an adult prison. Some states the age starts at 17, and then in some states the age starts at 18. Where if you're under 18, you're going to go to a juvenile facility. If you're over 18, you're going to go to an adult facility. Unless you've committed or been accused of a specific type of crime, then you might be like 17, but charged as an adult and put in an adult jail.
Do they keep the 18-year-olds away from the younger kids?
They're supposed to.
Right.
Yes. At least I'll speak about here in Georgia. They're supposed to segregate the two ages because, of course, younger people are going to be more vulnerable to older people. And in prisons and jails, you know, there might be people who are institutionalized, who have been there for a long time. And so there's kind of there's this belief that I hear a lot and that I also believe is that like jail and prison teaches you how to be a criminal.
Yes.
You know, if you've gone in there and maybe you've made a bad mistake, like maybe you've shoplifted, or maybe you were the wrong place at the wrong time and didn't do anything, or maybe you did commit something heinous like a murder, you know, there are people in the prisons who do prey on people, and because of that, oftentimes people are finding themselves having to join a gang for protection. So that's one thing. And if you're joining a gang, a lot of times that might mean that you're having to do a violent act or a criminal act, if you will, in order to kind of get jumped in, to get accepted into that gang. So maybe you have to beat somebody up, or maybe you have to extort somebody. So you know that's something that happens, and so they do try and keep what they call juvenile offenders, young kids, away from adults, you know, for their safety. But it is, yeah, I mean, the juvenile facilities, I mean, frankly, I've gotten calls about our juvenile facilities and them being horrible as well. I haven't done any investigations though into juvenile facilities yet.
Nervous, but what's the youngest person you've heard of being incarcerated in the juvenile detention center?
I mean, okay, so I don't know the ages because the thing is, if you're very young, you still might be arrested, but they might release you back to your family, or they might take you to like a group home that would be different than a juvenile facility, but more of like I wouldn't even say a foster care because it's not a foster home, but like they call them group homes, for kids, where sometimes foster kids are living, but sometimes it's just a place to put kids who might be young. But certainly, I mean, 12, 11, 12.
So
Yeah,
they're still babies, you know? I mean,
they're babies. Oh yeah, yeah. And I mean, like I was saying, you know, I've heard of here in Georgia people getting assault charges for starting food fights. You know, and
it's fun to have food fights. It's just, you know,
right, right,
it's what we did. We'd go out and play dodgeball. Now it's like if you hit somebody with a dodgeball, you're going to jail, which is
yeah,
ridiculous. You know,
yeah,
let kids play. Come in when it gets dark. You know, get outside and enjoy the fresh air. That's just crazy. Like when I have the teams on and I've asked them, you know, pre-recording, what's your biggest fear? And they all say, do I come home at the end of the day? I'm
yeah,
petrified I'm gonna get shot. And I'm like, I can't even imagine being their age and fearing every time they hear a noise. Is that somebody shooting a gun? Are they coming into my school? There has been more mass every year. It's getting worse. The
Mm-hmm.
numbers are getting worse.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not right. I mean, these are our kids.
These are our children. These are our children. Yeah. And I'll also say, we've talked a little bit about abuse and abuse with children in the home, and that's such a big deal.
Yes.
It's such a big deal when you're raising children in violent environments and teaching children that this is the solution. So, because like, say you do have a bully at a school, but this bully is growing up in a home where one of the parents is abusing the others of the parents, or they're in foster care and a foster parent is abusing one of the children. And like they're learning that this is how you resolve conflict, or this is how you find worth and value, is by making other people feel small and little. Like, is it that child we should be punishing? And like, yeah, we don't want our kid to fall victim to that child.
Yeah, break
Of
the
course,
cycle.
we don't want that. But like, what else can we do to just like support each other?
Yeah, that's why us women have to stick together and help each other. That's why I was like, I'm gonna break the cycle. I
Mm-hmm.
refuse because I grew up in a non-diagnosed narcissistic environment. And it was
Mm-hmm.
like I was never good enough. No matter what I did, it wasn't good enough. And
Mm-hmm.
Faith will come in here right now and say, my mom has never screamed at me and never raised a hand to me. She's never hit me. There are other ways to discipline without, and I can say right now that I can clearly, consciously say, I have never said anything to her that I regret. Like I was
Mm-hmm.
9 years old when my biological mother told me she had miscarried. And to this day, that stays
Oh
with
my
me.
gosh.
And
Yeah,
so
that trauma.
Faith will come in and be like, she's never said anything hurtful to me. Like I would say to her, I love you. You are my heart, but I don't like the choice you just made. And we need to talk
Mm-hmm.
about it.
Mm-hmm.
And we can talk about it and say, I still love you. You are my daughter. You're the love of my life, but I don't like the choice you made. Let's discuss what made you make the choice and what we could have done better. And then let's just evaluate it. And we talk about it. And then we have an understanding. And she comes to me and tells me everything, and she's almost an adult. And
Yeah.
so to have that, she's told me so many times, you have such respect for me. That's what makes me respect you. No matter how upset I've made you, mom, you still speak to me in a respectful manner. You don't raise your voice because in the moment we might be disappointed and upset and angry, but 15, 20 minutes later, we're not going to be, but it can still stay with her. And I told her from day one, I don't want her adulthood being where she's recovering from her childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's why I was determined that it stops. Like she will never experience it on my watch ever.
Yeah. And I'm just sitting here like imagining how this message from your mother of wishing that she would have miscarried you, how that played a role in any self-limiting beliefs that you had moving forward.
It's
Because
always
like,
it's always that way. Like she told my
right.
daughter that if I died on the OR table in one of my surgeries, and this is my daughter. She said it to me. It was never. It was like, why can't I be happy? My biological dad used to use me as a cover for his women.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd be like, if you tell your mom, then you must really not love me and won't make me happy.
Mm-hmm.
And
So love means lying.
it's a narcissistic manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, he hated that I had a therapist. And it was like, you're the one who needs it, but you'll never go. So I'm the
Mm-hmm.
one on the couch. And it literally was just, if you ever tell your mom about this woman or that woman or this woman, then I'm going to tell her that you made me. I didn't make you do anything. I didn't
Right.
pull down your pants. I didn't make you, you know, and
Yeah.
it was constant. Like I would go and he would say, let's go have dinner. And I always was like, all right. And he would show up in another woman. And I would just leave. I'm like, I'm not gonna be your excuse. I'm not gonna be your story. This is not gonna happen. And so that's why I was like, I refuse to have my daughter feel that way.
Yeah.
He used to do that around her. And no, not gonna happen. It's not, and I would always say, okay, go in the other room. I'm gonna talk to him. And she's like, I want to watch. I'm like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
just what you learn and you see. And later on down the line, I found out that they knew the person that ended up becoming my attacker. my abuser. And not only that, but I'm in the ICU with my daughter. Like I'm staying with her in the ICU, and they took him during our ICU and took him on a holiday, took him on a vacation.
Oh Lord.
And and
that's our sick. Like we have sick people. We have sick. Some of us are sick. Yes. And some of us are sicker than others. This is what we say in the recovery community. Like some of us are sicker than others, but we're all sick.
Pray for them every single day.
Yeah. And I'll say, Victoria, that I've yelled at my kid. My kids, like, I can't even sit here and be like, because I've yelled at my kids. I certainly have like threatened them with a spanking or a pop. We call it a pop. But what we do is make sure that we acknowledge where we were wrong, or we acknowledge where our feelings overcame us. And just try and really like humanize this experience of being a parent, because like I'm a human, like I'm a person. I'm a person that needs time and space. I'm also a person that gets upset and overwhelmed and angry. I'm a person that gets sad and that it cries. And all of these things are okay. And so like I'm really trying to teach our sons about I want them to know when I'm upset with them. But like if I've accused them, because sometimes, I have two sneaky, tricky people. And if I accuse one of them of having done something when really it was the other one, then I pull them both aside and I say, I'm sorry that I accused you of this, because obviously it wasn't you. And you, other child that did do the thing, like I'm not happy, I'm not pleased with this, and I'm not pleased that you let your brother take the fall for it. So, yeah.
It seems like in society, Whitney, it's okay if we have a bad day. If somebody cuts us off on the way home, it's okay that we're angry. It's okay that we have road rage. It's okay that we're upset or whatever. But our kids cannot have a bad day. Like in society, it is frowned upon if our children have a bad day. Why is that? Why can't our kids are just little people. They can have a bad day. You know, that doesn't mean because you're under the age of whatever that you don't get to have a bad day. Because that's not true. They're gonna have a bad day.
And that's what we say in my family, like so and so's having a bad day. One of my sons, Everett, he just goes through times where he doesn't feel like talking. Like he doesn't feel like greeting people. He doesn't feel like saying goodbye. He doesn't feel like answering people. And unless it's something like a safety issue where we think like you need to respond. Like if I'm telling you that you need to cross the street and now you shut down and you're not crossing the street because you don't feel like listening to like that's a problem. But like if somebody's saying bye to you, yeah, it's rude, but like, I mean, he's having a bad moment. He's having a bad moment. I'm not going to force him. I don't want him to hear, when he's 20, similar to what you said, like, I don't want my kid recovering from me when they're an adult. So when he's 20 years old and he's trying to like gauge somebody's energy and decide whether or not he wants to spend time with somebody, and he thinks that he doesn't feel right with this person, but instead of following his intuition, he goes ahead and is, faking it till he makes it with this person, and thinking of me telling him, oh, it's rude not to be nice to somebody or not to respond to them or not to let them kiss you on the cheek, for a family member who wants to greet him and kiss him on the cheek, then like, nah, I'm not about that. Just let him be him.
We can talk forever. I can't believe how long we have already gone today. Tell everybody where your podcast can be found. And it's coming. I'm already like following.
Yes.
So tell everybody where it can be found and how they can support you and find you.
Yes. So again, it's Impostrix podcast, affirming for professionals of color who navigate imposter syndrome and racial toxicity in the career. And I just want to note that although I am centering professionals of color in that, like, we are having guests who are people of color and all of that stuff, this podcast is for everybody, because as Victoria and I have discussed today, like, it really takes all of us to navigate these conversations, to navigate like cross-racial spaces, to the point where we're able to work better together and live better together, because we are an increasingly diversified world. Yes. So anyways, you don't have to be a person of color to listen, is really what I'm trying to say. I think everybody will gain something from it. And I am on all of the podcast platforms. I like to listen to my stuff on Spotify, but you do you. Listen wherever you want. You can find me on Instagram at Impostrix Podcast. I have a website, which is www.impostrixpodcast.com. And you can email me, which is also at impostrixpodcast@gmail.com. And so, yeah, I would love you guys' support. If you have questions or content that you want to hear in those kind of topics of the podcast, please feel free to reach out to me and let me know. Because, yeah, I'm really wanting to be a resource and to just engage. Like I said, the goal is to be validated. I want to engage with all of you. I want to learn from all of you because this podcast is just as much for me as it is for y'all.
I have to tell you, like I said in the very beginning, when I met you a few months ago, I just felt a connection to you. And I support this woman 1,000,000%. And I would say that if I wasn't looking at her beautiful face right now. I support her. And here's the thing is this is not just like an interview and then I don't talk to her anymore. We text, we email, we talk. This is a wonderful, wonderful human being who has the greatest, most amazing intentions and the biggest heart. And like I said, I would say this when I'm not in front of her and I support her. And I'm asking everybody that supports me to come out and support her as well, because together we make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This is where it starts.
Yes. So you're going to come back.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to bring
Duh.
I'm going to bring you back. So I want to thank you for being here now and for coming back soon, because I'm going to get you back. And again, thank you everybody for tuning in. And this was a little bit of a longer podcast, but it didn't seem like it. So hopefully you'll stay to the end and we will be with you again soon. Thank you, everybody. And we will talk to you soon. Thank you, Whitney.
Thank you.